I'm tired of virtual. No offense. So it's always nice to see people at a beautiful venue. So really nice for organizing this. Maybe a time where all you guys doesn't happen. So glad to be here. And what I'm going to talk about is Kubernetes and multi-cloud. A lot of hype around multi-cloud. Everybody's talking multi-cloud, and I don't want to say this. Maybe I'll say it anyway. I don't know if you heard this thing about web methods. The CTO of web methods talked about web services initially. So he compared web services to teenage sex, and basically said something like, everybody's claiming they're doing it, right? And nobody really knows who's doing it. And the ones who are screaming the loudest are the ones who are lying to their kids, right? So that's the state of multi-cloud and Kubernetes today. And again, I know in today's climate, these kind of statements are a little hard to do, so don't blame me, blame the CTO for web methods, okay? But what I talk here is about kind of the journey for Cassandra from like pre-cloud, really. If you think about Cassandra, it's been around since 2008, which is really about the time that, AWS came to being. I know there's somebody from AWS you can clarify, probably around that time, right? And kind of moved on, and Kubernetes kind of came somewhere in the middle. There are lots of parallels between Cassandra, the cloud, and the Kubernetes. So there are some things that Cassandra does well that actually Kubernetes does not do well, and vice versa, right? So I think it's a good match for Cassandra and Kubernetes, and I'll talk about all of that today. So the agenda for today is I'm going to do a quick intro, talk about NoSQL and Cassandra for those who have never heard about NoSQL and Cassandra, and then k8ssandra. And in fact, I started doing right, and basically he said, I'm really excited to see a talk. And I said, it's also summed up in one line, right? This is all it is. Help install k8ssandra. And that's really what Cassandra, k8ssandra is, which is really the Cassandra running on Kubernetes. But I talked a little bit about why this particular talk, because this is really a practitioner's guide. I struggled through this. And this goes back to about a year back, October 2021, when I had to get KubeCon North America in Los Angeles. That was my first, real conference after a long time, after 2 years. I used to do it quite a bit, but as many of you, we didn't do it for a long time. So I wanted to come up with some kind of demo which goes beyond k8ssandra. k8ssandra is cool and all that, but I wanted to do a little bit more. And that's when I came up with this multi-region k8ssandra, which is pretty easy to do on Google Cloud, because as you can see today, installing k8ssandra is pretty easy. I'll install k8ssandra. And really, it doesn't matter whether you're doing multi-region, multi-cloud, multi-whatever. It'll work just fine as long as you enable the networking, right? And that's kind of, how I started out with GKE. And then I moved on to AWS Reunion, which was like a month after that. This was in Las Vegas. And, a GKE demo is probably not going to fly well, right? So I said, okay, maybe I should do something on EKS. And that's when I came up with this. And then, kind of gradually evolved it. Now I have a demo today that I'll show, which is really installing a multi-cloud Cassandra cluster, like k8ssandra cluster, or really a multi-cloud Kubernetes cluster from EKS. And I installed it both on EKS and GKE, which is kind of cool. I use a product to enable networking called Aviatrix. But you could use Rancher's Submariner, right? Or there are so many other products as well, which are kind of in the same space. As long as you enable networking, and Aviatrix made it very easy for me, I was able to do that. So today I have a working multi-cloud demo, between all the 3 public clouds. So my role is a developer advocate at DataStax. DataStax, we maintain Apache Cassandra, Apache Pulsar. For those of you who know a little bit more about streaming are interested in streaming, go by Rags S, on LinkedIn, GitHub, and Twitter, right? I'm a developer architect, I was a mechanical engineer. I like distributed systems, and I really love to teach and communicate. One of the things I'm passionate about is the inner loop, or the developer productivity, which you can really gain a lot of developer productivity if you can speed up your inner loop. And what I mean by the speed up the inner loop is kind of do this number of times during the day and then push it to an outer loop, where you have a more robust CI/CD, like a Travis or a Jenkins or Argo or whatever, right? So that's a little bit about myself. I come from the Java side of the world, so I'm very passionate about multi-platform, multi-cloud, and that's kind of why I want to do this as well. I think Kubernetes does, again, unify a number of these different clouds. But if you want to do something that kind of spans the different clouds, it's not easy because none of them make it easy. None of the public clouds care about the other clouds. They care about kind of hybrid cloud, but not so much about multi-cloud. Having said that, how many of you already are doing multi-cloud? Okay. That's it, guys. No. You work for a vendor too, or? No. Okay. And what do you use, or what do you?
I do use. I don't work.
All right. Oh, I skipped this. This was my team. We do workshops every Wednesday, and actually, the live workshop went on when I was sitting right here, which was done by my other team, by my other teammates rather. So feel free to jump onto these workshops. Some of them were very introductory, possibly too introductory for this crowd, but some of them are pretty advanced as well. So feel free to jump in. All of them are free. All of them are based on an IDE, a visual IDE in the cloud called GitPod. Anybody use GitPod? The greatest thing since sliced bread. We use it for all of them, and it's really cool. It's a great tool to communicate. So with that said, what is NoSQL? Nothing fancy, nothing really great about NoSQL. You might be wondering why, but there was a meetup in San Francisco. That was actually in San Francisco at that time, and essentially, what they wanted to do was come up with a catchy hashtag, and that's what NoSQL was born. There was some mention of NoSQL earlier, but really it caught on, with this particular hashtag. And really the idea of NoSQL is, anything other than Oracle, right? I guess. Nobody from Oracle. How many of you, by the way, do NoSQL or use NoSQL or, yes? Okay, so this has been around for 12 years. Nothing new about this, right? So why the heck do we even talk about this? Is because again of the kind of the synergy between the cloud, cloud Kubernetes, and so on. Because it's really about horizontal scaling, right? NoSQL is about horizontal scaling, whereas if you think about a traditional MySQL or a Oracle database. It's really about, the easiest way to scale is to kind of go up and up and up, right? But at some point it's going to fall off. So instead what you do is you distribute your data across commodity hardware, which kind of, mirrors the cloud, right? The idea of cloud is infinite scaling, right? And that's really what you can achieve with NoSQL. In fact, with Cassandra, you see that it's really about linear scaling. It just keeps on linearly scaling without really leveling off. Okay, and the idea is that you're going to distribute the data. The data is going to be replicated in multiple nodes. All of that is taken care of by the platform. The platform has a consistent hash algorithm which essentially hashes the data into multiple nodes. And I don't need to worry about kind of creating hot partitions, distributing them evenly, and all that. All of that is taken care of by the platform. But still, within NoSQL, there are a number of different databases. There are literally hundreds of NoSQL databases. And you might have heard of this CAP theorem. Should I even go into this, all of you? Okay, so let me go into this a little bit, but essentially you have three aspects of distributed computing which come into play when you're doing algorithm scaling. One is consistency, the other is availability, and the third is partition tolerance, right? Consistency, availability are probably very intuitive. It's kind of what you would think it is. Partition tolerance, on the other hand, is a little bit, what exactly does it mean? It's the ability for the platform to deal with network failures, right? And the idea behind the cap theorem, or what the cap theorem says, is that when everything is working fine, when everything is hunky-dory, you can have all these three properties, no problem, right? But when there is some kind of failure, which is, almost guaranteed in a distributed system, right? It's probably going to happen at one point of time. Then you have to sacrifice at least one property, okay? In other words, you can have only two of these properties at any point of time of failure, okay? So in other words, I have to give up availability, or I have to give up consistency, or I have to give up partition tolerance. Giving up partition tolerance is a no-no, because it essentially creates the data is going to be in such an inconsistent state that even my grandmother can figure that out, right? Whereas consistency, on the other hand, is something you can give up for a certain amount of time. If I'm not on top of the leaderboard for 15 seconds, no big deal, right? Maybe it is, but you get the point. Even some banking applications, some heavy asset-based applications can actually deal with eventual consistency and can't get away with it, right? Availability, it may not be available for a certain amount of time. Again, in certain cases, that's a big deal. So you probably want it to be available all the time. So you may want to go with consistency and partition tolerance, or availability and partition tolerance, and not, maybe give up on consistency. So there are different options there, right? You may want to give up on availability and always be consistent. So what does consistency mean? Again, there are different degrees of consistency, but the strongest consistency is the one that I last wrote, is the one that I'm going to read next, right? That's really what it means. So again, I think I spent way too much time on this, but essentially this is also referred to as the Brewer's conjecture, pick two of the three. So the NoSQL databases kind of go into these different categories, and as you can notice here, there is really no database which picks consistency and availability and sacrifices partition tolerance, right? At least I don't know any. Cassandra generally is availability and partition tolerance, but the lines are blurring these days, because you can actually tune your consistency model, and if you make it strongly consistent, then your database might not be available for a certain amount of time. Okay? So you sacrifice availability in those cases and make it strongly consistent and partition tolerant, and so on. So one of the cool things about Cassandra is there is really no single point of failure. And again, I'm giving you a little bit of background because going back to what k8ssandra said about Kubernetes, it's not really a platform per se, it's really a platform for building platforms, right? And I think it's great for Cassandra, to sit on top of Kubernetes because, like I said, there are certain things that Cassandra can leverage in Kubernetes, and Kubernetes can leverage in Cassandra to make it an interesting product. There's always going to be sharding, but we don't need to go into this. But my oversimplified view of most of the NoSQL databases is that think of it as a distributed hash table. The nice thing about the nice thing about the platform is that you don't need to worry about nodes dying, nodes coming in, eliminating hard partitions and all that is taken care of for you. Okay. So Cassandra is configurably consistent. You can pick strong consistency. By default, it's what is referred to as eventually consistent. Eventually it will become consistent, right? Some of the top logos actually use Cassandra, and primarily for linear scalability. In fact, Apple was one of the earliest contributors for Cassandra. So a lot of these, in fact, we have Cassandra track in the Apache Summit coming up in October, and then we have a Cassandra Summit coming up in March next year. So if any of you are interested more with Cassandra, then you can take a look at this. But what we are here today is to talk about Kubernetes, right? And kind of multi-cloud and my experiments with how to make this happen. And I'm going to show a demo. More than likely, some people will fail, which is kind of cool, right? As an attendee, I would like to see, speakers struggle a little bit, So hopefully, I kind of work through that. What k8ssandra is Cassandra running on Kubernetes. And in fact, this is a paper that one of our product managers who now work for DataStax, right? If you can't beat them, you can them, right? That's what he did. So he was skeptical about running database in Kubernetes, and so were a lot of us. In fact, initially it's really about I come from the cloud foundry side of the world, and you might have heard of 12-factor apps, stateless apps. It's really about apps that don't really have a state. But really, if there's no state, what is the use of that, right? Very, very unlikely that you will have anything like that. But it wasn't really easy to do databases on Kubernetes initially. There are a lot of developments that have happened, and I'm not going to all of them. But essentially, right now, I think pretty much a lot of these databases are on Kubernetes, and some of these databases were actually born in Kubernetes. So I think a great time to be running your database on Kubernetes. And after today's talk, maybe you'll run it multi-region, multi-cloud, and so on, depending on what database you're running. So k8ssandra is our very easy help repo at k8ssandra, and help repo update and help install k8ssandra. Sorry. So help install k8ssandra and you're good to go. Okay. So what k8ssandra does is it installs all the different components, and because it's Kubernetes after all, you can install it really on any of the clouds or any of the Kubernetes providers really. I think I have installed it on every one of these on Kind, Minikube, and I have k8ssandra installed on all of them. Maybe currently running right now. And what it does is it can install all of these, including Cassandra, but also the additional components that are needed for what I would refer to or what anybody would refer to as day 2 operations of Cassandra, right? You want to be able to back up. So how do I back up? We have a Neo-based backup for that. All of these are done using what the earliest operator was referred to as CAS operator. Simply Cassandra operator, okay, which is a Kubernetes operator. And Kubernetes operators, as you know, is kind of looking for state, looking for changes in state, and kind of matching the desire to the what is required and all that. But I don't need to worry about any of that because all that I'm going to do is I'm going to say help install k8ssandra and I'm going to do it, right? So install CAS operator, and one of the cool things, if you're a developer, and I'm a developer myself. Is it has an API called Stargate, and whether you're using our database as a service called Astra, which is also based on Kubernetes, but it's not something that you maintain, right? It's front-ended by Stargate. As a developer, this is really cool because all that I'm going to do is I'm going to use the APIs that are available in Stargate. And Stargate has a bunch of APIs, including gRPC, REST. You guys hear me good?
Yeah. We can hear you with the microphones.
Yeah, the mic got
Maybe the battery died.
It is on. Thank you. all right? You know what I mean? Hallelujah. It's kind of funny, you know, many times when I go to talks, I carry 2 laptops. No one, I should carry 2 batteries or something like that, right? But anyways, we need to be highly available. We're not. I'm not prepared for that. Anyway, getting back to the point, it installs a lot of these components and you're good to go. But one thing we realized is that there is an operator, I mean, these operators are great for installing Cassandra, but they are not great for installing it in a multi-region way or a multi-cloud way or a multi-whatever way, right? And that's where the k8ssandra operator was born. And there is a really long discussion between, the technical lead for k8ssandra, John Snyder was supposed to be here, but unfortunately couldn't make it today. He and Jeff had discussions. What are the limits of Helm? What does Helm do? And what does the operators do and how they kind of complement each other, right? But in any case, you know, the TLDR of this is that, you know, it's easier to have a k8ssandra operator, which essentially takes care of the multi-cloud. Okay, and I'll talk about this in a moment. Cassandra is designed for multi-region. It's always been, because like I said, you know, it's good for partition tolerance, right? It is not terribly chatty, but it does chat more than just exchanging help messages. Okay, so each node has an idea of the entire network, which makes it kind of interesting. Okay, and data is automatically and asynchronously replicated, but the cluster seems homogeneous, so not a whole lot there. The next one is Kubernetes was not designed for multi-region. You know, in fact, I did a panel at KubeCon Europe. You know, Tim Hodgkin, who was one of the original founders of Kubernetes networking. He's the father of Kubernetes networking. And basically, you know, one of the requirements was that, you know, you had to have a flat network with Kubernetes where each pod has to be able to talk to every other pod, right? And that makes it very hard in a multi-cloud or a multi-region scenario. And that's where, you know, kind of using submarine or aviatrix or something like that will help. So services should be able to route traffic. There are a number of other, I wouldn't call it as limitations of Kubernetes, but that's the way it was designed. From the word go. So the k8ssandra operator is meant to make it a little bit easier. I mean, today, it doesn't take care of automatically doing the networking, you know, kind of putting all the VPCs, doing the network peering and all that, which I'll talk about in a second, right? But it does a lot of that. Makes it easy to install in a multi-cloud scenario or a multi-region scenario. And that's exactly what I've leveraged. This was something that happened actually, you know, if you go back in the timeline that I was talking about where I started doing these demos for, you know, KubeCon North America. It started after KubeCon North America, after AWS event, and happened sometime in early this year. So that's how I was able to kind of evolve it for multi-cloud as well. Earlier, there is a way in which you could do it, and the way to do it was you would take the seeds, as they're referred to, from one Cassandra cluster and kind of drop them into the other cluster. So the way I would say it is, you know, you take the seeds and seed them into the other cluster, and now it knows who the other cluster is, and it's going to start talking to it. It uses a protocol called classic protocol, and as long as network is enabled, you know, it's going to handshake and it's going to build a bigger cluster. Okay. But the k8ssandra operator kind of completely gets rid of all that. It does this all automatically for you. I don't have to plant the seeds from one into another, it just happens. But obviously there's something else I need to do, and I talk about it. You know, nothing is ever comes for free, right? You know, we know that. There is something that I need to do, but it makes it a lot easier. There is a concept of a control plane and a data plane, and we'll see all that. The control plane can be installed on a single cluster, which means it's not highly available right now. Okay, that's a limitation of the k8ssandra operator. But you know, the control plane can also function as data plane. Okay, so you know, a lot of times that may be required. So like I said, you know, I don't plant the seed, but what I might need to do is take the context from the data planes and plant them into the control plane. And that's kind of how the control plane knows what are all the data planes, okay, what are all the clusters where I need to install this now. Okay, and you'll see that in action. And this is kind of how I install the context. By just saying, okay, this is my k8ssandra cluster which spans the east and the west region, right? And this is the context for east and this is the context for west. And essentially the control plane will take care of installing it on east and west. And it's going to install a size of 3 nodes, a Stargate with size of 1 node, and things like that. It does all that automatically. And this is the k8ssandra cluster. We see all this in action. So I'm not going to spend too much time. Let me see how I'm doing with respect to time. 45. Okay, so I have plenty of time. I have 15 more minutes to talk about my demo. So with that, let's move on to the demos. Okay, because this is where I'm going to spend most of my time. Can everybody see this? Or not even a chance? Or I'll explain this. But basically, what this is I used, for AWS rebrand, I used a product or a project called EKS Kubefed. Unfortunately, EKS Kubefed or Kubefed in general hasn't gotten a lot of traction, and I think it's replaced by multi-cluster. But what I needed to do when I went to AWS rebrand was essentially I wanted to be the ability to be able to kind of stand up these things, tear it down, make sure all the VPCs are done, the VPC peering is done, the routing is established, all of that. I am not a networking guru by any means. Okay, if you think about compute, storage, and networking is probably my, the least capability that I have. So what I wanted was I wanted a product which essentially takes care of all of that. And EKS Kubefed actually does all that. So you can see here, and you'll see all of this in action. You will see that the Bastion host is set up on 172.20.0.0/16, okay? And then I have a cluster 1 which is running on EU West, okay, which is I believe Dublin, right? And then I have a cluster which is running on in Frankfurt, okay, which is in EU Central. And what EKS Kubefed does is it sets up all the VPC peering between the Bastion host and the clusters, and then between the respective clusters, routing, peering, all of that is done for me. As a networking noob, I don't need to worry about any of that. And as a developer, I really don't care about any of that. It just should happen, right? And you will see that in action. Okay, and with that said, let me jump into the. So let's start with the Kubefed demo and see how it goes. All right. One of my pains is I have too many tabs. I need to figure out where I am. This one. Okay, let's start with this. Okay, so this is my AV8X controller. Okay, and you can see here that I've already set this all up. This is EKS. Actually, maybe I should go with this. Let's go to that in a second because that's the multi-cloud demo. Okay, so I need to be a little bit more organized here. But here's my EC2 instances. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just go back to EC2 so that you can see what's running here. I have some 11 instances running. Okay, and okay, so let's go back to EC2 dashboard. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. I think it's probably the. Let me get rid of this. Okay, so here's my AV8X everything, right? My EKS Bastion and so on and so forth. And I have this Bastion host which is set up. Okay, so this is my Bastion host, and I'm going to connect to that. Okay, so let me connect to that. All right, get rid of this, and I'm connected. We're going to the Bastion host as sudo. So let me set the path, and I should be good to go. Okay. So now when I do a get context, okay, you'll see here, can everybody see this?
Yep.
Reasonably? So there are two Kubernetes clusters, right? And basically this is set up using, like I said, EKS Kubefed, and it does all of this for me. The current cluster is fed to 1, right? And if I look at the topology, pretty cool. You will see here, it's running on West 1A, West 1B, West 1C, which is rack aware. By default, Cassandra is rack aware. So even if 1B goes down, no problem, it will keep on taking, right? And in this particular case, even if an entire region goes down, right, it's still fine because there's another region that I'm using, right? So it makes it pretty cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the context. Let's see if I can. You can never say, is it use context or set context? I'll know in a moment. Nah, it's use context. Okay. And if I get the context, yeah. What's going on here? Oh, did I say 1? Okay, 2. All right, so let's see if, okay, so now it's pointing to 2, 2. Okay, you can see the star. And now if I do the get topology again, right, you should probably see central here. So west and central. Okay, central 1A, central 1B, central. So all of this is set up automatically for me. And one of the cool things, all of this, like I said, it put it into the different VPCs and all that. Probably that's not a bad idea. Let's look at nodes. Get nodes. I don't care about topology. Let's do this. And you'll see here, somewhere in there, where is it? 172.22. Okay? So 172.22 is on central. Okay? And if I go back to 1, you will see that this would probably be 172.21. Okay? Does that make sense? This is all, I had nothing to do with this. I have no idea how this is all established, but EKS Kubefed takes care of that. But the idea behind this is, as long as you enable networking, Cassandra is able to leverage the multi-cloud, the multi-region, the multi-whatever cluster and make it happen. For those of you who are, Cassandra admits, you know that you use something called as node 2, okay? So DC2, oh, it's DC1. So what I'll do is I'll just use 2.2. Okay, they should do it. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at the multi-region DC2, and this shows me the view of Cassandra. So see here, there are 3 clusters in west. Okay, there are 3 nodes in west and 3 nodes in east. I'm sorry, center. Okay, and it's 172.21 and 172.22. All of this is automatically taken care of for me, the EKS Kubefed. And that's kind of how I built my multi-region on EKS using EKS Kubefed. Now fast forward to the multi-cloud, and I use Aviatrix controller, and you can see here I have EKS, and EKS is running on 10.2. Okay, so that's the EVPC that's allocated for that, right? And then EKS is probably 10.1. Okay, you can see here 10.1. Everybody see that? Okay. And the last one is GKE, which is 10.3. Okay. You see it here, 10.3. Okay. And you'll see this in action. Aviatrix, I used. I used some Terraform scripts to make this happen. Okay, AVX multi-cloud Kubernetes. And you can see here, kind of dig through this Terraform scripts. I think somewhere in here it will have the regions and appropriate values for each of these. You can kind of look through this. But essentially these Terraform scripts will install, there you go, 10.0. And somewhere in there it should have the 10.1 for EKS and 10.2. Anyway, you can dig through the scripts and kind of take a look at this. Okay. So it spans multiple clouds, right? So now what I'm going to do is, I've set this all up. I've set up all the networking. Again, no clue about how to set this all up, but using the Terraform scripts, I was able to do that. And 10.1 is EKS, 10.2 is EKS, and 10.3 is GKE. I used EKS as the control plane and installed on the data planes. Okay, to be able to see that, let's go to Lens. Okay, so Lens, as you can see, has like a hotbar, and this is my EKS cluster, right? So let's look at my EKS cluster, and you can see here there is a config, which is the client config, and the client config actually specifies the data planes that I'm using. Okay, so I'm using EKS and GKE. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay, and I can show a little bit more, dig into it, a little bit more detail. But let's look at the parts that are running here, right? And if you look at the Cassandra operator part, you should see the control plane as true for this. So somewhere in here, it has the k8ssandra control plane as true, okay? So on the other hand, if I go to EKS, right, and if you look at k8ssandra control plane, it's false, because those are one of the data planes, okay? So the same thing with GKE as well. Let's go to parts, kind of take a look at it, okay? And you'll see that this control plane is also false, okay? And just to dig in a little bit deeper, what we can do is we can kind of look into this, and so that you don't have to suffer through my typing, I will just cut paste easier, okay? And what I can do is I can, again, describe nodes and look at topology. Let's see if we can glean anything here. So this is my EKS cluster, okay? And you'll see, again, it's a very small one. Okay, I just have East 1A and East 1B, not something I would recommend in production, right? But this is just a toy kind of installation. But again, it's rack-aware, it does everything automatically. So if I go to, actually let me do this. Let me go to the GKE cluster. You should see things a little different. Okay, and kind of do the same thing. Okay, and it's US East 4 and 4C. You can see that Google and AWS kind of use a little bit different region. 1B, whereas here is 4-C and so on. Okay, but you kind of get the idea, right? So essentially, what this is if I do a kind of the node tool, I've got the username and password already. Okay, so I'm just going to exec the. Let's see if this works. Okay, you will see here, I switched to EKS AVX cluster, okay, and kind of the same thing, you'll see there is a data center on EKS and there is a data center on GKE, and that is the multi-cloud cluster that I was able to create using the k8ssandra operator. And this one is 10.1 because EKS is 10.1, right? And 10.3 is GKE, okay? So hopefully that kind of give an idea of how I set this all up. Let me see if anything else I missed. I think that's good. What we can do is we can take a look at parts. Yeah, let's do that. And you can see here, I really don't have a whole lot here running, you know, the k8ssandra operator. I don't, I think I may have Stargate running, and it should be here. So you can see here, Stargate is deployed here. But, you know, I can have everything, all the other components installed as well. I just took an easy way out and installed. Let me see if I have that here. Maybe I do. So this was the values that I used. And you can, maybe not this. Yeah, there you go. I have only Stargate enabled. Okay, and of course this is a little bit old, so maybe I was trying something else. But you know, none of the other components are installed. But you can install whatever you want as well. Okay. So with that said, I think demo-wise it was not too bad today. Let me go back to my. So we saw this. So in terms of resources, call for action or whatever, you know, if you're using Cassandra, you know, we want to try it out on Kubernetes. k8ssandra.io, which is an open source project, you know, has a lot of really good documentation. You know, if any of you are interested, you know, feel free to talk to me. I wrote a blog about how to multi-region Cassandra on EKS with k8ssandra and Kubefed, EKS Kubefed. Like I said, you know, unfortunately, Kubefed is not great, but the not great in terms of, you know, it's great. It's not great in terms of support that it's getting, but you know, it kind of is the same principle anyway. So kind of take a look at that if you're interested. I gave a very similar talk at Southern California Linux Expo. I think it was a little bit longer, like an hour or so. So I had a little bit more time to do the demos. So you know, if you're interested, you know, take a look at that. If you want to take a look at other workshops that we had, go jump on github.com/datastacksdevs. We have a whole bunch of workshops. If you want to do a discussion, you know, happy to, you know, connect with you that way. We have a number of workshops running. Like I said, you know, we have Quarkus and Lens to slay your inner loop, which I'm doing next week. It's going to be a virtual workshop on Wednesday, 11 o'clock. You know, if you guys have nothing else to do, you know, feel free to jump on that. We do get a lot of people from around the world. You know, in fact, our peak attendance has been something like 800, with a lot of people chatting like crazy. You know, in fact, we have our entire team supporting just the chat, and sometimes we have to say, let's stop the chatting for now. Let's focus. It's a typical 2-hour workshop, so you know, it's all hands-on. And we also require you to do some homework, which we grade. You know, very simple homework, you know, not a big deal. But if you don't submit your homework, you don't get a badge. You submit your homework, and you think it's reasonable, you get a badge. And surprisingly, these badges are very popular. You know, again, it may not be applicable to, you know, senior developers like you, but you still, you know, you never know. You may have a lot of people in your team who may be going through this and still building up their careers. We have a lot of cool badges, and I myself, I like these badges. They look kind of cool. With that, thank you very much. Take a couple of questions. Oh yeah, good.
So I noticed that, yeah, you were saying Kubefed is not quite the best, and I'm also hearing all right, now it works. I've been hearing that Kubefed is, they're talking about depreciating Kubefed,
Yeah.
and I've been hearing that there's a new project, maybe not new, called Karmata. I was wondering if you have looked into that one for multi-cluster.
I haven't. Honestly, I haven't. Anybody else has? I've looked at the one that Huawei had, but by the time I tried setting it up, it was just too much. I couldn't do it in time for the conference. Do you guys remember which one was Huawei's? It'll come to me in a second. It could be Karmata, but I don't think the name is not on here. So, no, I haven't.
What? No worries.
Any other questions? Yes.
So, I
I think I did not catch how did you connect to clusters? Was it the seeds configuration you did in Terraform? Or?
So how I connected the cluster was using k8ssandra operator.
No, but how did you specify where the kube config and all that? How to like connect with the cluster?
Right. So I wish I can bring up the blog. And essentially what you do is when you're installing a k8ssandra cluster, let me show that actually in action. So, this is the lens, right? Okay, yeah. So this is my control plane, right? And in my control plane, I have a concept of what is referred to as a k8ssandra cluster, if I can find it. Okay.
Like a CRD, which basically defines it.
Yeah, and what this does is, this k8ssandra cluster actually has the context for the different clusters.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of chicken and egg, and you're right in asking this question, is once you have the credentials for that, it's easy to, kind of spin it up, right? So that part is still manual right now. So you have to inject the configurations into the operator, but after that, it's all automated. I don't have to do the seeds. I don't have to worry about any of that. So from a Cassandra perspective, all of that is automated. But from a Kubernetes perspective, there's still one manual step.
So is Cassandra also, let's say, like regional failures? Is it resilient to those? If I have one cluster in the cluster, this cluster B goes down, would I be able to like lose some information there, or is it just rack aware or rack resiliency?
By default, it's rack aware. But what I've demonstrated here is that you can make it, regionally available as well. What I haven't done, and to be honest here, is that I haven't looked at the latencies, because that's where the devil is in the details. So if you're doing like a multi-cloud, it's fine for showing the node tool or doing a simple demo. But if you're doing a production cluster, obviously you're going to be constrained by the speed of light, right? So those are some things that I haven't really gone into it. Those are something that probably is homework for me at some point. But yes, you can kind of be resilient to regional failures. By default, you have 3, right? So you can have more in the case of region. So obviously you're paying a little bit more, but it's up to you. If your application so demands, then you'll go there. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you all.